What does it say about a civilization when punishment begins not in darkness, but under the blazing sun for all to see? In the Khmer Empire, justice was as public as it was punishing. Among the earliest and most common forms of correction was a harsh combination of enforced exposure and physical discipline, a method intended not only to discomfort the body, but also to humble the spirit. The typical scene: an offender brought before a temple or market, stripped of dignity, then made to sit or kneel beneath the tropical sun for hours, sometimes even days, without shade, food, or relief. This was no passive endurance. Alongside the exposure came strikes with a bamboo stick, the chief instrument of Khmer corporal punishment. These strikes were measured and symbolic. Blows were often directed at the back, buttocks, or thighs, areas chosen to cause intense discomfort without risking fatal injury. The goal was not execution, but coerced compliance through pain. The individual was made to endure visibly in front of fellow villagers, monks, and officials, underscoring not only guilt but also a lower social standing. Exposure itself carried layered significance. In a society where physical presentation and modesty were closely linked to honor, being made to sweat, falter, and break down publicly was a form of identity denudation. And when paired with physical punishment, it became a public ordeal, a cautionary example indelibly imprinted in a living memory. Those who withstood such penalties often carried the physical and emotional marks long after the offense had faded from record. Sun and stick justice in the Khmer Empire was a method of exposure, both literal and symbolic, designed to restore order through suffering and to turn the human body into a living emblem of obedience. What punishment leaves a scar not only on the body, but on a person standing for life? In the Khmer Empire, bodily mutilation was not simply retribution. It was a deliberate instrument of social condemnation. To be maimed by the state was to be indelibly branded as an outcast, stripped of dignity in the most public way possible. Unlike secret executions or silent exile, mutilation announced guilt to the world. It was a punishment founded on public display, often carried out in public spaces, temple courtyards, or market crossroads, where the message would be clearest: disobedience has consequences you cannot hide. These weren't isolated acts of cruelty. They were sanctioned measures, likely carried out by temple guards or officials of the king's court. The loss of a body part carried symbolic weight. The hand that stole was severed. The tongue that lied might be pierced, burned, or even excised. Zhou Daguan, during his 1296 to 1297 embassy to Angkor, observed, "When thieves are caught, they are beaten. If the crime is serious, the fingers are cut off. There is no physician. The pain is for life." This absence of medical attention was deliberate. The agony was an intrinsic component of the sentence, and healing was not a right. For women found guilty of adultery or slander, the punishment could be even more gendered. Public shaving of the head or scarification of the face meant not only to punish, but to make them socially outcast and unmarriageable. What's critical to understand is the role of religion in these acts. Khmer kings ruled by Devaraja ideology, the belief in the divine nature of kingship. Violating the social order was a sin not just against the state, but against the cosmos itself. Mutilation, therefore, became a method of re-establishing cosmic equilibrium, even if it meant lifelong suffering for the offender. And the stigma was enduring. A mutilated individual was not only disfigured, but often excluded from temple services, marriage, or even communal rice rituals. In a society where identity was closely tied to religious observance and caste-like social roles, such exclusion was devastating. In the Khmer Empire, mutilation was never arbitrary. It served a dual function: retribution for the crime and a permanent social branding that ensured the offender's isolation and shame would endure for life. What if justice didn't just punish your body, but erased your legacy entirely? In the Khmer Empire, one of the most devastating forms of state-imposed penalty was disinheritance. Unlike mutilation or imprisonment, this punishment targeted not the flesh, but status, lineage, and property, the very foundations of Khmer identity and honor. Inheritance in the Khmer world was central to social and spiritual continuity. Land, especially rice-producing fields, passed through familial lines under royal sanction. Possessing property, recognized through temple inscriptions and land grants, was both a legal and sacred right. To be disinherited was not only a financial catastrophe, it was a profound social excision from Khmer society. When individuals committed crimes against the temple, defrauded royal officials, or betrayed oaths of loyalty, the crown or the religious establishment could seize their land, revoke hereditary rights, or deny burial on family grounds. In many instances, these acts were public and etched into stone. At Priya Khan, for example, 12th century inscriptions under King Jayavarman 7 detail land confiscations tied to misconduct, with offenders' names permanently recorded in temple stele. This form of punishment had religious consequences. In a Hindu-Buddhist society where honoring ancestors through offerings and rites was essential, disinheritance meant spiritual annihilation. One's descendants could not perform ancestral rites if property was stripped and names removed from lineage records. What kind of civilization delegates the act of punishment to a beast weighing 6 tons? In the Khmer Empire, the elephant, revered for its symbolism and supreme strength, was not only a royal emblem, but at times an executioner. Elephant justice was not merely ritual. It was an intentional and calculated form of capital punishment, carried out in full view of the public. The elephant, or Kunjara in Sanskrit, was associated with divine authority and cosmic order. Kings who ruled as Devaraja, god kings, were believed to embody divine will. When a monarch ordered an elephant to execute or punish, it symbolized the direct administration of justice from the heavens. Historical sources, including inscriptions and regional parallels in South and Southeast Asia, confirm the elephant's use in capital punishment. In the Khmer context, this often involved criminals, typically traitors, rebels, or grave offenders, being tied in open squares or palace grounds, where trained elephants were directed to crush, trample, or dismember them. Dojo Dagwan does not explicitly describe executions by elephant. He references the centrality of elephants in Khmer royal ceremonies and public spectacles, reinforcing their significance in royal command. Unlike in India, where execution elephants might be trained to prolong death, Khmer elephants were likely used to deliver expeditious, yet profoundly symbolic justice. What made this form of punishment so terrifying was not only the physical devastation, but the ritualistic setting. Drummers, court attendants, and sometimes even temple priests would accompany the execution, turning it into a visible manifestation of royal decree. Moreover, the use of an elephant reinforced the non-human judgment of the state. A person could plead before a judge, but not before a beast. When the king commanded the elephant, no appeal remained. The punishment became a statement. You did not just disobey the crown. You were crushed under the overwhelming force of the cosmic order the king upheld. What if your punishment wasn't death, but endless toil under an unforgiving sun, deep in the jungle, far from the eyes of your kin? In the Khmer Empire, forced labor was not a marginal penalty. It was a foundational element of the state's punishment system. For those who committed serious but non-capital crimes, exile to imperial labor projects meant enduring a sentence of sweat, disease, and gradual physical and spiritual erosion, often for life. From the 9th to the 13th centuries, the Khmer state oversaw one of the most extensive and complex hydraulic engineering systems in the pre-modern world. Reservoirs like the West Baray, spanning over 16 square kilometers, and intricate canal networks were not feats of divine intervention. They were built and maintained by tens of thousands of laborers, many of whom were convicts. Inscriptions at temples, such as Priya Khan and Ta Prohm, particularly under the reign of Jayavarman VII, record the mobilization of vast numbers of individuals assigned to temple service, irrigation, and infrastructure. For criminals, especially thieves, debtors, and those accused of violating temple or royal laws, punishment frequently included compulsory conscription into corvée labor. a state-imposed form of servitude. While not legally equivalent to slavery, it was virtually indistinguishable in practice. These men and women, often shackled in groups, were sent into dense forests to quarry stone, cut timber, or clear land, activities both hazardous and unrelenting. This was not a temporary punishment. For many, there was no set sentence. Return to society depended on the will of local officials, temple authorities, or, more rarely, royal pardon. Death from exhaustion, snakebite, or infection was common. Thus, the dense jungle served as both their relentless prison and their eventual executioner. Across stone temples and jungle roads, the Khmer Empire administered justice not only through law, but through ritualized suffering, public disgrace, and irreversible exile. These punishments reveal a world where order was enforced through spectacle, and the human body became a canvas for state control. Their legacy lingers in how we remember power, justice, and fear. What do you think punishment meant to a civilization that believed kings ruled as gods? Comment below. As the Manusmriti declared centuries earlier, punishment alone governs all beings.